Hello, hockey friends and families around the world, and welcome to another edition of your favorite show, Our Kids Play Hockey. I'm Lee Elias with Mike Vanelli and Christy Casciano Burns, and there's a good chance that you're listening to this show through a mobile device with a screen. And today's topic is all about screen time and the constant struggle we face as parents, coaches, and kids with limiting how much we consume on a daily basis. To do that, we've brought in a very special guest, an expert to discuss how we can create a screen routine that totally rhymes. I didn't mean to do that can impact performance. Larissa Mills is the creator of the Mental Game Academy and the Mental Game Podcast, and is a cognitive behavioral specialist with a bachelor's in sociology, psychology, and a master's of science in education. So well qualified for this topic. I've had the pleasure of hearing Larissa speak at events in the past, and each time I walk away with a stat or a strategy that I can apply with my teams and even my own kids. Of course, with a show that has the word kids in the title, we would be remiss if we didn't tell you that she's also the proud mother of 3 children. This is going to be an impactful episode today. Larissa, welcome to Our Kids Play Hockey.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. It's so nice to be here.
It's nice to
I'm
have you here.
excited. I'm
I'm
excited.
excited too because again, this is one of those topics that's I think everyone has an opinion on it. Everybody wants to know stuff, but we're bringing kind of hard facts today, which are always changing. But this is going to be definitely one of those topics for everybody listening today. That's you're going to want to know what Larissa has to say. But Larissa, before we dive into that, all of us in the athletic mental fitness world and that arena have an interesting story about why we dove into that space in the first
Mm.
place. What's yours?
I think there's probably a few that sort of allowed me to come to this, like the cortex of it, right? So, I was a coach for a long time and still do volleyball. And I started to see my athletes' behavior changing like in on 2003. That's when I saw this happen. So I saw the flip phones and I was like, what are you doing? You're going over to your phone and I'm right here on the court with the balls. I'm ready to go. And soon as you put a phone in a room, you can't compete with dopamine because dopamine and the notifications and the social aspect of phones drives the frontal cortex of a child's undeveloped brain, right? Like they can't control it. They can't. Barely, I'd say adults struggle with it,
Hmm.
but kids can't. They physically, their brains are not able to do that yet. So I was like, what is going on here? So one of our head coaches, who was a volleyball coach who coached me, he was like, this isn't good. My dad came and he's like, put them away. This stuff's not good for the brain. And so what I did was I got those old like cool Adidas gym bags with the cheap straps in the 1990s. I'm like, I put them all
Absolutely.
in that bag and I'm like, when you get here, they're mine. And that was 1999 and 2000 and it started in 2002 and then it got worse and worse.
We're talking
But
Motorola and sidekicks at that
right,
time. I
exactly.
know
Like they'd
exactly what
kill you.
era
The
you're talking
Motorola would
about.
knock you out unconscious, right?
Right,
So
Nokia.
then I
Yep.
started to see my teams were winning. Why? And then our club, we decided to take the phones away for each team from the club. Well, our club did very well. I mean, the girls were happier, they were more energetic, and my coach was always, and my mentor was always like, you may not be the best volleyball player on the court, but I want you to be the best thinker on the court.
Hmm.
And so phones distract us from cognitive processing, thinking without thinking. Hockey is a game of thinking without thinking, automatic, right? Volleyball is not quite as fast, but you still have to make decisions in less than a second. So I started to see athletes were indecisive. They were hesitant. Their confidence was going down. And as I took this on, my teams remained okay, but I had to really apply more mental skills. So as kids were watching more social media and video shorts, which shrink the hippocampus in the brain, which is a very scary thing, very scary. They were coming less equipped mentally. So then I had to put in more mental work. So I'm like, okay, that's it. I need something like a program that I can give them that is structured and I just was caring about my athletes at that point, right? So I just wrote something. I got them on routines because cognitively we need to think positive and effective and
Mhm.
productive. But kids don't understand that in order to be positive or stay in green and beast mode, that our brains have to work effectively and productively first to get to positive. Well, 80% of the kids that come here are in yellow on their traffic lights because social media keeps them in yellow and keeps that nervous system tracking yellow. So if you wonder why kids are moody, not listening, and distracted in their development practices, that's probably one of the major reason why is because dopamine really sets our nervous system off and our heart rate. And our brain is like, at the end of the day, stop buzzing me, dudes. The brain is like, 176 times of touching your phone is enough for me. Like, stop. Like, the brain goes, I'm out. And I have kids who touch their phone 390 times a day.
Wow.
So we really have to be aware of what we're setting up. And kids won't stop, right? Kids cannot, in their neurological senses, stop. So it's our job. And if they're coming less equipped for performance, in fact, I'd say performance is over here, and I don't see many kids performing. I see kids struggling with cognitive and psychological skills. So that's
Hmm.
how I got into it, I guess, is that long indirect route is I saw my own teams changing.
We'll dig more into the sports element, but I got to jump in here because New York State right now, it's a hot topic, banning cell phones in schools. Governor Kathy Hochul hasn't made a decision yet, but she's weighing heavily toward instituting a ban on cell
Oh,
phones in
absolutely go
schools.
for it.
It's a huge debate around New York. One of our school districts went
Yeah,
ahead and already, jumped the gun, and they
good.
already instituted a no cell phone policy while
Yeah,
in school. And you know what they've seen? We just talked to them last week. They've seen kids more engaged. Kids are actually talking to each
they
other in the
talk.
lunchroom again. They're
I know.
playing games. They're
Yep.
having facial eye to eye contact,
They're
which is
learning how to
something that
talk.
they're learning how to talk again.
Yeah,
But parents are very hesitant. And maybe you can help parents, let
yeah,
go a little bit here.
yeah,
Because of all the incidents we've had in schools, we
yes,
want our kids to have cell phones with them. So in case something
yeah,
happens, I
yeah,
can instantly get a text from you, talk to you, know that
yeah,
you're okay.
yeah.
So it's a struggle for parents too.
I think that's a twofold answer. So the first one I'm going to give is a safety feature where I went to the police and I actually heard them talk about safeties in schools with guns and shootings and bomb like as we have those threats here. Actually, the number one distraction in the hand of a child in the moment of an act like that is a phone.
Mm.
Because
Wow.
a child needs to look at the teacher and the eyes in the room and be aware of everything that's going on around them. If they're on a phone, they can actually alert their perpetrators to where they are. So you don't want that. And the perpetrators can now actually find your phone. If you have something on, they're going to track you. So
Wow.
you don't want anyone to know, right? That you're there. And the second thing the police told me was, and security, who was running this in the RCMP in Ontario, was that you need to be listening to the eyes of the adult in the room at the time because if you miss signals like quiet, move, and you're left there talking on your phone and you've missed the whole class leaving your room to go to the next back room, that's a problem. And that seems to be happening more. In fact, your child is more likely to be in danger with a phone in school in an incident like that because they're not listening and it revs their nervous system up and they panic more. And
Wow.
kids today go to panic instead of reason, right? So for those parents, my children don't have any phones in their school.
Wow.
I never have because I want them alerted to whatever is going on. I want their wits with them. And that untethering of the parent to the child with the phone, I have to say that you're actually making your child more dependent and nervous and anxious.
New way of
So
thinking.
right,
Yeah.
and this is not just me, this is the collective medical
Right.
community,
Yeah.
right? This is physicians, emerged physicians, families, psychiatrists, neurologists. They believe that phones are not allowing kids to learn accountability or responsibility.
Hmm.
They must be able to think independently with their brain. So
And
that's
then
the
the other piece of it was just being engaged in school, right?
that's the bonus. So the bonus is we get kids are like in France, they banned phones immediately when they saw what was going on. These kids, their rates of suicide, depression, and anxiety all lowered.
Wow.
Their behavior and for us, this is a behavioral epidemic, right? It's a behavioral epidemic because kids don't have the mental skills to cooperate, communicate, or compromise, right? Or control their behavior. It's the game and the challenge of the C words. Because if they are in control or they can compromise, we wouldn't have kids throwing stuff at each other and ended up suspended in schools, or we wouldn't have bullying going on. This is the highest bullying rates ever in school and education. And I came from the school system as a behavioral consultant, and I said, I'm out. If you're going to put phones in, I'm out. It's uncontrollable there with phones. So behavior is what our number one mission is in schools with discipline, and of course, the mission of curriculum and education. But you can't have discipline, order, and enjoyment unless if their phones are there. They just look at them nonstop. So I'm happy. Anyone who's banning phones, yay, leadership. Yay.
All right, a timely topic as we discussed in New York State, also a timely topic in the home of Mike Benelli. So I'm going to turn the mic over to Mike.
I love that you called him My Benelli.
My
Now,
Benelli.
now I can think of My Benelli. All right,
Yeah,
we're gonna
yeah,
give
yeah,
the mic
yeah.
to
That's
her. Go
what.
ahead.
So, and I know, and I'm really, like I said, I've said this very often on these podcasts that this is like the best educational resource I think for myself, and I think and sometimes and I'll take it's good for me to hear from all these different people, right? But ultimately, it's you're a parent in a place with your kids. I've got a teenager, a older teenager, and a preteen,
Yep.
and the preteen doesn't have a phone yet. Um, we talk about it is a thumb, but like what? So here's where I struggle, right? And to create a healthy phone routine and
Right.
increasing performance. I think this is all like I think everybody knows this. Like I know that if my son is not on his phone for 6 hours in a day, it's better for him. But the fight is now like well, I'll give you a great example. My on our fifth grade graduation, going to sixth grade, every kid, every kid graduated is exchanging numbers,
Wow.
right? And he's the only one not that didn't have a phone. I mean, literally the
Wow.
only person. And I'm looking at my wife and we're
Wow.
going like, what did we do wrong? Like we've
You're
really messed
not
this
doing
up.
anything wrong. You're doing right.
Right, but what happens is now the
Yeah. Yeah, I
kids
know.
are in these situations, and I think I find this as a coach too. Like we tell the kids they can't have their phones, but yet we do all our communication through the phone. We tell them they can't do this, but yes, we're asking them to look at these, 7 hours of video where on the phone. I don't even know if my teenager opens his computer anymore. I mean, because in the school, so all of this stuff we're fighting. Um, you know, I would love to hear, and I just got into this fight this week about it, was more about not the use of the phone so much, but more of well, when you're on your phone, what are you taking away from
What are you getting out of it?
your life? Like, what are
Right.
you taking away from development? What are you taking away from
Mhm.
communication? Because there's only so much time, right? You have 24 hours, and like maybe tell us a little bit about the statistics you're finding. I mean, if there's 24 hours in a day and our teenagers are on the phone for 7, 8, 9 hours of that,
Ooh,
like
that's too high.
yeah, right. But where are they getting the time? Like where? So how are we filling that void? And what are some strategies we can use
Sure.
to to
Sure.
make sure that we're not that even us as
Overloading them,
parents,
yeah.
we're not
Right.
relying on the phone for them, because Chrissy just said it. Like I think that's the biggest argument I get from other parents. Oh, well, I need to be able to contact my kid during the day.
No, you don't.
You
No.
don't. I don't think you
No,
do.
you don't.
That's why you go to a school. I mean, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, that's why you're in a place of that you trust. And hopefully,
And
I
let's
made a
start
I
and
made
let's start back with that. So let's go back to this untethering of parents worrying about phones at school and they want their kid to have a phone. Well, we're creating an anxious generation of kids. And if we want to increase that, we'll give them a phone by all means. But here's what the problem is. They're not going to think for themselves. They're not going to problem solve for themselves. They're not going to be able to do things for themselves. And and the phone thing at school, Actually, I want to say that when I was in school, it was a very tragic accident that happened. A kid in a class, parents both died. They're orthopedic surgeons in a plane crash.
Mm.
The principal got a phone call from hospital or somebody. If you're in dire straits and not just missing your phys ed shorts, right, or an apple in your lunch, you can be contacted through the school. The principal came, got the child out, came to the office. The grandparents came, got him. He went to the hospital. He was found out that his brother survived, but his parents both died. And so the school has these policies in place to protect the children and to get the proper communication in. And we have to start trusting our school bodies again, because that is ultimately that's where it needs to happen. But kids have to learn to start thinking on their own. And right now, we're creating a completely dependent society with very little leadership. That's very scary to me. To your point about children on phones too much. Well, I can safely say that the majority of the pediatric societies, the American, Canadian, Australian, and British, all say 1 hour of phone time. That's it.
Wow.
Because the brain and brain chemistry and behavior are three different things. So you may lower the dopamine and the cortisol and bring down the nervous system back to control. But the behavior of touching the notifications becomes an obsessive compulsive disorder, right? It's an obsession. It becomes almost like instinctual. Like the more you keep ringing the bell for the Pavlovian dogs, you're going to go and salivate, right? That's all this is. That's the same science applied in the reward system of the brain. So we have to teach the kids that you can't have your phone all day, because you can't be a judge and have your phone all day. You can't be a doctor and have your phone all day. You can't be a pilot and have your phone. There isn't one job where you're allowed to have your phone all day in your hand. And I'm afraid we're not creating thinkers and leaders, because you need to have mental IQ, phone IQ to have leadership IQ today. It wasn't like this 30 years ago. It was just mental IQ and integration of team cohesion standards. It's very different today. So the average child is on a phone 22,000 hours. Some are 35,000 hours by 16.
Wow.
Because some school boards put their kids on phones. Now that's wrong. I don't care what leadership board you are, but there should be no phones or no phones used. In fact, all the evidence and science points to, if you write, talk, show, share, teach, curriculum goes from the short-term memory of the brain to the long-term memory of the brain, and we remember things. Right now, we're not remembering much. So that's why boys' GPAs are crashing in the US. Crashing. Our averages here in Canada don't look good. You don't want to look over here north of the border. Not good. So we have to do something. So routines you were speaking about, Mike, are actually the best. And educating them about what social media is, and to make it don't take my good energy. I want it to give me good energy. And if it's not giving me good energy, delete it. Delete the person, be safe on it, and limit it to 30, 40 minutes a day, but not scrolling on video shorts, which actually hurt the brain.
Yeah.
They actually are causing the hippocampus to shrink, which I hope everybody understands that's an important part of the brain. And now the trend by Dr. Hutton, Dr. Twenge, Dr. Cheever, who are leading renowned scientists in all of this area, are saying we're at a tipping point here of phone use. We have to get it down or ban them.
So I would go home, right, and I'll recite that verbatim, right? I'll sit at the table, but as I'm scrolling, telling my son that and I think this is like so. There's no doubt about it. Like I mean, I am in a profession where I use my phone quite a bit. I mean, my phone's replaced almost everything I do. I mean, that's just I'm talking to different kids, I'm speaking with coaches, I'm watching video, I'm doing social media posts, I'm like
Right.
I'm on my phone way too much, and my kids will throw that in my face. I'm like, well, you're on your phone, and it is, but I think it becomes a we're all in the world with all the kids. So I think unless you have a community around you helping you, like it makes it so hard, because if your kid goes to a play date and all of a sudden every kid has a phone and that's how they're communicating, Like it's a very
Well, there's phones, like a True phone, you can text. You don't need the browser. You
right,
can talk and text.
right,
All these
right.
new phones are coming out. In fact,
Hmm.
if your team ecosystem and sport ecosystem is encouraging a healthier use of tech, which we work with hockey organizations, we have different partnerships all over, and we're encouraging coaches to go back to laptops because it actually we're seeing our coaches in our highest levels who we work with in the NHL, OHL, NCAA, they're revved up. They're angry. They're stressed. They're in a pressure cooker anyway. So actually moving to your laptop tells the kids I'm at work. I'm not just dabbling on my phone. So all my work is done pretty much on my laptop. I can do all social media, everything. And when, you know what? I've changed it and I help other coaches change it too. When I'm doing social media posts, my kids are at school, they don't see it. So that when they come home, I'm working. Mom's on a laptop at the dining room table. I'm working. And that way kids start to see the work ethic, not the phone habit.
Mm.
Yeah, right, right. Because every time I'm on the phone, my little guy's like, "Oh, you're on Facebook again?" I go, "No, I'm not on Facebook. I'm emailing somebody." But I could understand that. Like if you look down, and I was on my computer.
Right.
Most likely, I'm
I got to
working.
practice when I'm preaching at home.
No,
So,
it makes a lot of
Right.
right.
sense.
So
Like it's
my
just
habits
the
had to
visual.
change first. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
And
no
I have
doubt
a
about it.
20-year-old, a 17-year-old, and a 13-year-old. And the
Right.
13-year-old just got a phone. Just. And he doesn't even have all that stuff on it. What do you call it? Data or whatever. He has to Wi-Fi, but if I tell my kid I'm going to drop you off at the rink and I'm going to pick you up, he doesn't need a phone. Like they 30 years ago, we all survived. In fact, we were more independent and there was better health statistics than there were then than there are now,
Right.
right? So
But
the
as
routines that
yeah,
to go back, laptops or work, and I try to use my phone less when my children are around me so that they see that I'm working. That they see adults are working now, not because adults can be on their phone up to 12 hours a day,
Yeah.
right? It's becoming a real issue in the corporate world because we do cognitive performance, like corporate cognitive performance for different corporations. And now we've actually got adults down from 4 to 9 hours a day down to 2 hours a day of phone use.
right. But as Mike pointed out, his 17-year-old is barely on the laptop now because you get assignments
That's
and
crazy.
videos that you have to watch. It's just as easy to watch it on the phone. More convenient for hockey kids because we're traveling a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's easier to just have your phone with you. So now you're saying, well, okay, well, I
Right, but
want to limit
there's a
you.
different.
Yeah,
Are you on there bullying? Are you on social media? No, you're actually looking at constructive film. That's different. And if you're looking at it as a collective of people all traveling, like I got different partnerships with different NHL development groups. The kids are all doing that. And it's like, okay, at 9 you're going to do it. Book it. Say it. Discuss it. Travel it, but make it a point to it's to use your phone with intention,
So
right?
I guess that's my point. Really, I know, Lee. I mean, I
You're
just
good.
so I'm trying to get as much as I can out of this.
right.
So what you're saying is what makes a lot of sense, right? If we work as a team, if my team is following this routine, if I'm a development
Right,
specialist and I say, boys, girls, whatever, our team
right.
is using this as part of our
That's different.
development strategy, right? But at least then I'm saying we're all in this, like, so all of us
Right,
are
right.
going to view this video at this time.
From 10 to 11.
But then
10
the
to
rest
11.
is has to be the rest is off the phone, and we have to
Right.
collectively as a group. So, like, just like bullying, right? Or just like being a captain of a hockey team or being a
That's
leader.
right.
Like we talk about all the time. Like, hey, sometimes it's harder to stand up and say what we should be doing
Right.
than to
Mhm.
go along with the crowd. So if we're all sitting in the room and we're all looking at our phones, somebody has to be strong enough to say,
Mhm.
"Hey, boys, let's put the phones in the Adidas bag and
Yeah,
let's go do
yeah,
something." And
yeah,
but that comes from the culture and the leadership
yeah.
and the
Like
way
I'm
you develop
seeing,
your
we're
program.
working with complete leadership now where we're giving them tons of different procedures and protocols and ideas. Because if you're not investing in your game and your mind, phones are just going to sabotage your game time. So why are you bothering doing that? Because if you're gambling, if you are on, here's the weird thing. Our brains take 20 minutes to refocus on something that we were doing or should be doing. So if you just made a bet 2 minutes before you got to go out in the first period, or you just looked at your social media and you found out some girl didn't like your post or somebody didn't like your picture. I'm telling you that what these kids are thinking about in the first period isn't hockey.
Right.
They're in yellow on their traffic light, and one negative thought, one tracking thought will not give you beast mode on the ice. And these kids don't have that divisiveness in their brain and the discipline yet. Not even adults in pros. We do soccer and NHL. And especially betting is the worst. When they place their bets just before they go out, I can tell you that you're not going to play that well. I can guarantee it. And then when you go back, the first thing you're going to check is your phone. You're either going to be happy, reward, and the brain goes, yeah, or you're going to be mad because you just lost a couple $1,000 and
Yeah.
you're angry. So then your second period, not going to be so great. So we're teaching our pros and our other kids, because we've got 16, 17, 18-year-old kids all betting. This betting thing is out of control,
It is.
and inappropriate use, I might say, as well, out of control. So we're trying to help them be safe, but use the phones 2.5 hours, 3 hours before they leave the house to go to their practice or their game, and leave your phone at home or leave it in the car. Then you're not tempted because our brains simply can't not look, right? So, and I tell you, the athletes that are doing it, we have kids who are now in the OHL, kids that are now going to AHL, kids that are getting on to Olympic teams because they've made these simple changes because our brains hate tech. We love tech, it makes our days easier, but we have to just balance it out. That's all. Balance it out. And the best time to use social media is at noon every day because it's the highest point of light, right? And then we have time to think. But not before bed in our rooms, when kids are on it the most, the worst time, the most destructive time for their minds. And kids are coming to me, very little confidence, very little self-esteem. And that's what social media does within 30 scrolls is actually take their brain and go, I'm not good enough. I'm not strong enough. I'm not ripped enough. My virtual reels are all better. Oh my gosh, their reels and movies are better than mine. I suck. So they go to bed thinking they suck. Then they wake up, how do you feel? I suck. And it's this toxic cycle these kids are trapped in. And until you intervene and give them, I got kids now, no problem. These teams are killing it. I can't wait for my tournaments with my teams. They'll be number one for sure. As soon as they know how to go to bed without a phone, don't check it for 30 minutes, and they check it at lunch every day in three, they're doing just fine.
Right.
It's taking that dopamine down to take the nervous system down and the heart rate down.
Yeah, can I interject one more time, please?
Yeah,
So is it kind of like smoking? Like they say, if you're a smoker, right, and you
this
stop
is worse.
smoking.
This is
No,
like
but like,
cocaine.
but if you
Yeah.
stop
Wow.
smoking, but you can recover.
Yeah.
Like it's amazing what the body can do, right? So
Oh,
are
this
you
is more
saying,
instant than smoking. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is,
Yeah.
is that something where you're seeing in your studies and your actual work is that when these young men and women, these players, can strategize to do these uh hints on how to be on the phone, when
Phone
they could be on
routine.
the
Yeah, to get the phone
phone
routine.
routine,
Yeah.
that you're seeing, like that's something tangible that a coach and a parent will see like
Yeah. Yeah.
instantly.
Right. So I had an NCAA team. Within 1 week, they were like, I feel better.
Wow.
I think I'm
Wow.
faster. I think I'm stronger. And the one guy goes, you totally hit that guy clean. That was a good hit. And so what happens in our brain when we're on less dopamine, all of a sudden our brain goes, hello, I'm awake, I'm ready to fire, and now we can think. So the hockey IQ actually goes up. And you can see hockey IQ, like I got a coach going, I don't know what you just did to these kids, but in 2 weeks, they're faster, they're playing harder, and their energy on the bench is insane. And I'm like, okay, and that is the trend. You'll see changes within not even days, but like collectively, we're doing studies now. If we're lowering the dopamine for a couple of the Canadian varsity teams, we're testing their physical results, right? To see, did your vertical get higher? Did your lift get better? Because if dopamine goes down and you're in control and you feel calm, you can go green in beast mode. But if you're in red or yellow, you're angry or upset, you're not going to be able to lift well or test well. But it's pretty quick, right?
Yeah.
The coke or cocaine, that's exactly what we're doing, a little hits of microdoses all day. So as soon as it's out of our system, we can forge ahead, head down, work done, right?
Larissa, there's so many places I want to go from here. I got a page full of notes. One of the things
I'm
is
going to put
just,
myself on mute.
yeah, no, you're good, Mike.
Well,
I love
no,
when
no, I
you
love your questions. I
yeah,
get it because we can
yeah,
totally help
yeah.
all the
Please
hockey
don't mute
ecosystem.
yourself. There's a few places I want to go from here. Like
Okay,
one is
go.
to just breaking the habit, right? With parents, it is so easy for us to kind of have, well, they're into it already, but I equate it to
Mm-mm.
diapers a bit. It's like, yeah, you're gonna have a hard week that when you try and get the kids out of the diapers,
It's
but
like
you just
potty
have to,
training. So
yeah,
be
you got to
yourself.
do it, and the benefits are clear. You have to communicate the benefits a little bit too, and I think
Yes.
that's part of it. A couple other notes too. We were talking about sending kids to school or sending kids out with phones. There are alternatives, especially at the younger
There
ages. Like
are.
my kids walk home multiple days a week. They have these watches that we control,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And
Yep.
they're basically only on when we decide for them to be on. They love it. They love the responsibility, but it's not something they can scroll and
Yep.
use. And I think at the younger ages, that's a great thing. It obviously has GPS in it. I know exactly where they are.
Yep.
That solved the need without them having a phone.
Right. Like
Um,
Cosmo watches or anything like that are really good. TrueMe
right.
phones are really good. I don't
Yeah.
recommend many phones, but if I could get a TrueMe phone here in Canada, I
Yeah.
absolutely would for my
And
kids.
my point is there's options. There are other
There are
options than an
options.
iPhone or a
And there's
Droid.
also control apps. We have control
Right.
apps. I want my kid for dinner or you've had too much and you've gone over, bam, off.
Right. But
If
and
you
that's
can't
part of the
control your brain, I'm going to
responsibility.
control it for you.
That's part of the responsibility of being a parent. The other part is this. We are all guilty of this as adults. A lot of us use our phones. I think you said it too, Larissa. Like I'm very conscious. Again, no perfect parents, but I'm very conscious of, am I using my phone at the dinner table? Am I using my
Yeah.
phone when they're sitting around? Sometimes I do. I'm not perfect with it, but I'm conscious of, no, we're having dinner
Good.
right now. And the other thing too is put the phone in the other room. I mean,
Yeah, the
like if you
docking
keep,
station is a huge thing for
yeah,
families.
put it away. Like why create, because we get those dopamine hits too. We're just a little older. And I think there's a responsibility as an adult to remind ourselves like
Yeah.
we did this. We handed them the phone. We handed
Yep.
them the technology. That was a choice. So there's some responsibility there. Now, with that said, I want to rewind back. I wrote a book a few years ago about the emerging technology in sports. And one of the things we
Yep.
found, and I think this is actually pretty important, was that technology always evolves faster than our ability to utilize it, right? The,
Correct.
the example I always give
Always.
is in the Civil War, the cannons and the weapons were far advanced from the Revolutionary War, but you still
Correct.
got people marching in a line across an open field, and became the bloodiest war in American history. And
Yep.
it was around that time we should probably change the tactics, right? Because walking into
Yeah.
this cannon fire is
Right.
not a good
Right.
idea. Computers, digital technology is no different. It is advancing so
Right.
fast, and we are not, as a society, utilizing it
No.
to the best of our
No, we're not.
advantage.
No.
Right.
Right.
So,
Yeah, we're actually at tech is so ahead of us that behavior has taken 2 decades to really show us what's going on with too much
right,
tech use.
right,
And now coaches, here's where I come in on the coaching ecosystem side, because we're teaching coaches cognitive strategies to help meet with this new brain, this new addicted, distracted athlete that can
right,
barely focus for 2 minutes in
right,
a practice. So now we have to meet the kids where they're at, and these
right,
coaches are struggling not with coaching hockey. They don't know how to coach hockey. They're
right,
struggling with behavior because this brain can't focus. This brain has we don't have any confidence in this child. Instead of one kid misbehaving at a 17, it's I'm saying it's like four kids are addicted to their phone, five have no esteem, five can't listen. Like
right,
this is
right.
not
Well,
good.
and it's based on their let's say their feeds as well. And like I'll say this too. Like let's give some practical advice here, right?
Right.
I'm coaching 10U right now amongst
Yeah.
other teams.
Right.
They already have an issue paying attention, right? So it's
Correct.
all about the approach for me. I could yell at them and say, God, pay
Yeah, it just
attention
doesn't
when
work.
I'm talking. And what I do is we actually do a lot of quick 2 minute meditations of let's just stay
Correct.
focused for two
Good.
minutes.
Yep.
And then what I do is, I have never underestimated a young kid's ability when an adult is talking to just drift off into space. That's been
Correct.
happening forever. But
Yep.
what I've done with them is start to say, listen, It's okay. That's a natural response, but I need you to recognize, and this is the key for me. I need you to recognize your mind is drifting and try and bring it back. And then I present that to them as this is a skill set. I also
It's
tell them
skill.
too, Larissa,
Yeah.
that you're a squirt right now. In Pee-wee and Bantams, this will not be accepted.
This won't
This
be
will be the
acceptable.
difference between you
Right.
making a team or not. And that now I have their attention. And
Hmm.
again, we practice it. This is the other point. We practice I mean this, literally every time we're together, we do these little quick mind reps and we
Right.
work on
Good.
it. And I
Keep
explain
doing
it.
it.
It's a skill. You got to
Yep.
work on this. Now, I don't have them 24 hours a day,
Right.
but I can tell you right now, they get better at it every time,
Yep.
right? They're not as distracted. They seem to be focused,
Right.
and you can
Right.
see them do it on the bench sometimes.
And
So,
that's good too, Lee,
yeah,
because this skill set, auditory skills have declined
right,
because we're a very visual society now. So kids can actually learn more visually through reading playbooks or video, but you got to track them on the videos because they'll just
right.
sit there and blank
Uh,
stare at the video, right? And go,
yeah.
So put them on video, that's great. But unless you're tracking or watching or circling, they won't track it. So visualization for athletes today is 40% more likely what you're dealing with, and
Right,
auditory, they're checking out. But to get them to listen more, shorter instructions,
right. Oh
right?
yeah,
And then
yeah.
add them together to get your big 4-part progressive advanced hockey drill.
Right.
Like we're talking to USA Hockey and Hockey Canada, and we're helping they're like, we don't know what to do. Okay, well, remember at 14, this is still going to be like if you're teaching 16-year-old boys and girls, they're behind 2 to 3 years of their cognitive and mental development. This is how far they're if they're on their phones 2 to 3 thousand hours a year, we're not helping them to get ahead. They're behind. So we need to bring them back up. But right now, when you're coaching, I would suggest looking at drills 2 to 3 years behind their age
It's
to get them
interesting.
to.
And I'll tell you this too. You're seeing it in the clearest one is communication. The
Oh, for
lack of
sure.
ability to verbalize anything is a clear problem to the point
Yep.
that at practice is now um, we work it in the sense of like, if you do not call for the puck, I will not pass it to you. You just cannot forget to do it. And it's
Right?
okay. You just won't get a pass on that drill. I joke all the time, Mike, that if we could text on the ice, we'd be the best communication team on the ice. If I
Correct.
could text, hey, go to the net.
Go
I'm
behind the net.
going
I'll
to
pass
cross.
it to you there.
But here's the thing. I'm saying this too. It's frustrating, but I'm also empathetic to the kids. This is the environment that they've grown up in.
We
So
set them up with it.
exactly. And I try and approach it like for
Yeah.
action items here with an understanding of that, right? You can't go in and just yell at them. First off, that's just going to make them want to do it.
Actually, this
You know,
child today, if you yell at them, is more likely
it
to
will shut
cry
down.
and
Yeah.
even shut down
Yeah.
because they have very few coping mechanisms and problem-solving techniques. Even our 18-year-old boys are crying and girls.
Yeah.
They can't they can't cope with feedback. They shut down now
Right.
because they're
And we're
not
seeing
listening.
that
They
in the
right?
we're seeing
It's
it in the
very
workplace.
common
Yeah, it's a generation it's a
thing. Yeah.
generational change. And again, look, we every generation deals with something, all right? All
Yep.
right, every one of them deals with something. I don't even know the long-term effects of when television came around, what that may or may not have done. But my point is this, there's
Hey, Dukes
middle
of
ground.
Hazzard was good.
It was a great show.
Yeah, but that was the same. But that was the same. That was the same thing, right? Watching the boob tube and just
Yeah, and that's
like
way better for us, to be honest,
right.
than
But I
any
mean,
of this stuff. Yeah.
but the
Yeah.
time, like I know for a fact that that was, oh, you're gonna sit here and watch TV, or you're gonna go out and train, or are you gonna do this, or you're gonna go train.
Right.
So I mean, so we're dealing with just a different, like more addicting technology,
This
right?
is far
Because
more
it's
addictive.
with
Yeah.
them all the time. Like
Yeah,
I
it's
Yeah.
don't
cocaine.
see
That's what she said.
they're
She's
It's
right.
holding it in their
cocaine.
hand.
There's no other word for it. It's like
So
micro doses.
I do want to kind of keep turning the show
Yeah.
towards some real
Yeah, yeah, sure.
actionable items for the
Yeah,
kids.
let's go.
It's funny too. His last point is, I get that screen time update on my phone weekly, and
Yeah.
my I was working on this, and my screen time started to come down, and I'm like, my God, this is like weight loss. Like this is
Yeah,
hard. It's like losing weight, and you got to
it
really
is.
put in the time and be hungry. So, I mean, that's just me talking as an adult. Here's a great question. Again, parents, you've got to be sold at this point that this stuff is not good for your kids. So I know what you're asking at home, which is, okay, well, what do I do? I'm bought
Yeah.
in. Larissa's
Okay.
right. What do I do? Here's a good starting question. At what age should we even consider our kids having a full out mobile device?
You really want that answer?
I have to ask the
I
question.
think it's going
Uh,
to be some tough love here.
And don't say never
18.
because that's not realistic.
18, I think is it
Uh,
25, right? But
Right.
18, right? And here's my thing. Is it with a browser and social media or is it with
Right.
talk and text?
Right.
That's the difference of what I'm like, what are you asking me a full-blown iPhone? Then no. That's just like handing them,
That is
bye,
exactly what
I'll
I'm
see you
asking you.
later, and you'll be messed up forever. Or I can give them talk and text. I
Right.
can give them a True I can put them on control apps. I can teach them how to use a phone. But
Right.
18, right? 18 is what I'd say. If you're just going to hand them a phone, uh, well, fine. Can we give them one at 14? Well, that's the worst stage of puberty for social media and texting and the most inappropriate stuff I've ever seen amongst and illegal stuff on phones.
Sure.
Because that's when their brains are like, I'm in puberty, let's go. They're out of control. And they're like 14, 18. It's like their brains actually are working overtime in puberty
Right.
brain, right? So that's really not the best time to give it, but a lot of people do. Now, you can give it to them with segmenting. Okay, I'm going to let you have one app. Can you control yourself on it? I'm going to let you have the phone an hour a day after school, but you have to have your chores done, this done, and this done. I have a parent, a whole group of soccer, a whole soccer club. Chores, doing their journals every day for soccer because no teachers give homework anymore, and something else. So, because if we're not teaching them accountability at home and to do things in their own free time, we're not setting them up for a future.
That's a
So,
great example.
right,
Yeah.
accountability is built in.
Yeah.
So
That's part
then
of
give them
hockey
an
too.
hour.
Yeah.
And do you know what they're on? Because another kid, he was gaming with a kid he thought was another kid and ended up to be a pedophile, found their IPS, tried to lure the kid out. And that
Right.
happens. So you have to monitor. I have phone checks. And if you're asking me about setting up a kid's phone, it's got to be routines. Routines are key and it's got to be controlled and you have to control it. So if you're going to give them a phone, the worst time to check a phone is actually in the morning as soon as you wake up.
Right.
That's
Right.
the
We
worst
we
because the
we don't let our
dopamine
kids
goes the
have it.
highest from its lowest, and so the brain's fighting to get that high dopamine all day. So the best time to check your phone is like, hey, get 5 wins in by 9 a.m. Make your bed, make your food, do your chores, do stuff, do your rolling, do your Pilates. Like our other athletes who are trying to go D1, they got to build these things in. They got to have their accurate. So check at 9. Check
Larissa,
your
I'll tell you this
phone.
too. I'll tell you this too. I can hear parents saying, well, is that realistic? Because that's hard. It's hard. It's gonna be
Uh,
hard as a
I have
parent.
bags under
yeah.
my eyes.
Yeah.
I'm a parent. It's
It's
hard.
gonna be
And let me
hard.
tell you, it
Right.
doesn't get easier as a parent. It gets harder
Right.
as a
I
parent.
think I think the other thing you said too, and it's a huge action item because I don't think a lot of people are aware of this. Because look, we all know the kids at a certain age. Well, all my friends have a phone. Why don't I
Right.
have a phone? I want a phone. You're bringing up a good point. There are plenty of resources as a parent to get your kid a device that you can control, and
Yep.
you have to
Yep.
do it because again, look, you said it earlier. Every kid's got it. Every kid wants it. Why can't I have one? If every kid was doing cocaine, would you give your kid cocaine? Right now, again,
That's
it
a good
sounds
question there,
extreme.
Lee. I'm asked that daily. Like literally, I'm asked that
Yeah,
question daily, probably on a podcast or an interview,
yeah. And you
right?
look, parents will say, it's not cocaine though. Well, we're kind of saying it
Mm,
is.
Right.
mm,
Right.
And I do want to jump in here because we touched a little bit on it about the notion of privacy, right? And
yes,
we gave our daughter at age 16 full blown iPhone. She didn't. I have to be honest with you. She didn't have any issues.
but
She was
that's a
very
little bit different of
responsible.
an age too.
Yeah, she
Giving
was
it to
very
them that late.
responsible.
Yes.
But there was one time, and we made it clear to her that we may be doing some spot checking. There was one time I said, "Okay, hand your
Yeah.
phone over." And she was quite offended. Well,
Oh, they
why?
do.
I'm
They
I want
do.
to look at it. Don't you trust me? Of course I trust you. I trust you very much. Well, then why are you looking at it? Well, then you have nothing to worry about, do you? If
This little
there's nothing
dance,
for me to
little
see.
dance.
So we're doing this back and forth.
Yeah,
And then I
yeah,
finally said, you know what? As long as I'm paying for it, I pay the bill.
Right.
I have the right to check it. If you
right.
want to pick up the phone tab, if you want to pay the bill, then
Yep.
you have all the right in the world to keep me out of your business. I said,
Yeah.
but since I'm paying the bill. And
And
she
yeah.
handed it over. She goes, you're right, Mom. I looked at it. She was
But
clean.
it's
There's
also,
nothing
Christy,
on it.
you trust your daughter,
Yes,
but you don't know the other people that are all connected with her.
that's very
Do you
true.
know who they are and do you trust them?
Right.
And that's your argument. I don't, I trust you, but I
Yeah.
worry about everyone else that's
Great point.
on there.
Yeah.
I
And
always
that's a
say that
great
to my
argument
kids
too.
too.
Like if
I
you're
say that to
watching
my kids all
behavior
the
at
time.
school, it's your kids are there, but these are just kids you can't see. So I'm gonna
Right.
double check the kids I can't see.
Well,
Yeah.
it's
You
like
know they're even
driving.
real people?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like driving. I always tell my kids like you can do everything right driving, and a drunk guy can end it.
Right.
No,
You know what I
Very
mean?
true.
And so it's not fair. Like that's part
Right.
of it too.
Well, that's what we all
right,
Yeah.
right,
experience, right? With
right.
teenagers and especially driving. Like, yes, you're a good driver, but when you have other kids in the car,
Mhm.
you're a distracted
You're
driver. And I don't
Right.
distracted.
care, well, you have people in the
Yeah.
car. Yeah, but I've been driving for 45 years. I said,
Yeah.
Right.
so like that there is like it's just I think it's the same thing with phones
Very
and maybe,
similar. You're absolutely
it's like,
right.
listen, I know I have like I don't take my like if I'm giving lessons or if I'm working with a student or play my phone's not out and on. But then unfortunately I'm like, well, like, oh, I'm doing social media posts and I'm filming the kid and I'm doing this. So in essence, I'm just saying, well, I'm not really privately here with you. Like I'm not here
Mhm.
engaged with you, even though I think I am. And maybe even the teenage player probably thinks I am, right? Because this is just part of their normal life. Like
Right.
they look into a classroom and everybody has an iPhone on the
Head
desk
down. Yeah. Yeah.
and they're
I can't
just
even
I said,
believe
so
that.
are you going to connect with your teammates
Yeah.
if you're all head downs? How are you going to connect on the ice? How are you going to connect on the football? The football players
Well, and
mostly have
Larissa,
to
look,
communicate,
you're bringing up
right?
a good point. Is we as adults, we have to create some form of value for them to put these things down. Like this is a two-way dance, right? We could
Right.
tell them it's cocaine, and they're gonna go, cocaine's awesome.
Yeah.
I love cocaine. That's where they're at, right? The,
That's where they're at.
the other truth is this too, is that I remember being told this when I was a kid, like when you're a parent, you will understand. And I remember that age being like, that doesn't matter to me because I'm not a parent. Guess what? Now I'm a parent and I
And now
understand,
you really freaking
right?
care.
Yeah, and I think we all have to kind of, and that's what's so hard about it is you gotta trust yourself that okay, you're doing, Christy, to your point, right? You're doing the right thing.
You are.
One day they will have kids and they will understand why you did
And
what
she's
you
going to
did.
do that for her kids.
Yeah, but I
Right.
say that too. I'm like,
Absolutely.
I know I don't trust you. Well, you should. I go, yeah, but I was
Yeah.
17
Yeah.
too. I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
16 and I wouldn't trust me.
Well, there's
Like I'm
that
like,
joke, Mike. Mike,
like
you know a teenage boy is lying?
yeah,
They
they're a teenage
speak.
boy.
They speak.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was a joke I heard one time, which is
But
not fair.
and
Not fair
again
to any
and but
teenage boy.
now
Yeah.
what's what are the extremes? I guess we all
Right.
experience this. Like the extremes are, what do you mean my son is selling drugs every day on the corner? Like I'm oblivious
It,
to that.
they're selling
But
drugs on Snapchat. A kid down the street just got caught. He's selling
Mhm.
drugs to the local school. He uses symbols on Snapchat. The other kid, this is a great story for all parents to understand. Do I have another minute there, Lee?
Sure. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay. So here's a good one. There's a high school here. This happened about 5 years ago here in London. I'm in London, Ontario. A mom was driving by a vape shop. She saw her son get out of the van and go in the vape shop. She pulled over. She's like, what the frick is this? Pulls over. It's in the middle of school. And she's a nurse and she was going to work.
Wow.
So she saw it. She's like, what is happening? She
Right.
watched him come out with a box. Then he went back and got another box. Then she followed him to school. He's oblivious, not catching a thing. He goes to school. She watches all the kids come to the back of the trunk, and he's selling vapes
God.
to the kids, younger kids. Now, for the next, she didn't quite know what to do, right? So this is a mom of a mom from a soccer team that I was on, and I was like, what she did was she let him figure out her day. She went to work. She had to think about what she was going to do. She wanted to be smart. So she just said, you know what? I really don't think you can have the car tomorrow. I'm going to take it in and I'm going to get all of them fixed. And she wanted to see how he would roll. Then she called her friends to a police officer and said that's really illegal. They're under 18. If he gets caught, he could have jail time. So, although she checks his phone, she asked for his phone. And in there, she can see on his Snapchat, he's selling vapes and he has a little icon for it. And she figured out his system. So she figured out she goes in as a fake person. The police officer suggests to be a fake person and go and sell something to him. And make sure that you're there when he sells it to you. So she shows up and he's like, oh my God. And so he'd been banking 10 grand like in a year. He was making money. And she goes, you're done. You're grounded. There's no car. There's no, and the police officer did a little chat with him. I applaud his capitalism. Like
I would say
I
good
applaud
entrepreneurial spirit
his
there. Yeah.
entrepreneurial spirit, but
You're buying
wrong
your own sticks
avenue.
now, kid. You're buying your own sticks.
But the
Applied it the
phone
wrong
had
way.
all the evidence, all of
Yeah.
it, all the people, all that he had specialties, he had favorites, everything. He
Yeah.
had Google Notes and notes. So everything was tracked on his phone. And she goes, I
Wow.
didn't check it before. Now I
I,
wish I'd checked it more.
I think this is, going back to the community piece of this, right? Is that, like, I know when I was coaching in high school, and Facebook and had just come out,
Oh,
and
right.
and and
Okay.
and, and all this other stuff, like you were saying, like when you, like, back in the 2000, early 2000, when all this stuff, like, and I would get, like, I don't want to say I was hated, but definitely it was disappointing for the players to know that I would call their parents when I was in the locker room hearing them talk about the party they were having Friday night because
Yeah,
mom and dad were going to be away. And I just felt it was my obligation, and to other
it
parents too.
is.
Like,
It
hey,
is your
listen, are you going
obligation.
away this weekend? Because we're in this together. Like, I think the piece of the community
The village.
aspect of this, and why
The
you
village.
belong on a team, like why you join a team, is hopefully that other parents
Yeah,
are looking out for your kid like you should be looking out for theirs. And that's probably the strategy we could use on the phone use. Like
correct.
if we can implement things that are happening at the rink when the kids come in, if all the parents,
Right.
it's like anything with peer pressure, right? I mean, if
Correct.
all the parents say, "Oh, well, did you put your phone in the bag? Because you have to." And
Yeah.
I'm not going to call you. Like, if I need to get a hold of you, Coach Benelli has my number. I'm going to
Right.
text him to pull you out of the meeting. But I think that's
Right.
where we have to strategize together and say,
Right.
well, how do we change this culture
Yeah.
of I'm the
And it's
only
easy to
one?
do, actually. When you're all doing it, it's easy.
Sounds easy. Yeah, it
Right.
sounds
Takes a
easy. I mean,
village.
It's
but I
it's
mean,
a
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
assume that it would help everyone.
it does.
And then I think at the end of the day, and you could talk about this a little bit, is it also alleviates, like, all of the legal stuff, like the kids having phones in the locker
Oh,
room,
the
kids
the
having.
whole change room aspect with the nude photos and the constant drop, like that has got out of control. So,
Right.
Yeah, for those of
So
you
we're protect, so
wondering
we're
why,
ultimately
yeah,
protecting ourselves too.
we,
I
we
mean,
we
at the
did
end
an
of the day,
episode about the new rules for the season, and there was a
right?
lot
oh,
of
correct.
interest about, well, why does someone have to be in the locker room with the kids all the time? Well, you're starting to hear why, because these things are starting to happen. All right,
I
and it's
saw
and
some
it's
pretty
definitely a
horrible things
problem.
last year. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. So look, along those lines, keeping this on action items.
Yeah, yeah, I
Um,
have to get off by 11:30.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
no. One of the things that I realized recently, well, not recently, a few years back, was that my news feed was very different from some of my friends, right? Because you
Oh,
kind of live in your own little world when it comes to social media. And my news feed's very positive. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like I
yeah.
follow a lot of inspirational pages. I follow a lot of inspirational people like you, Larissa. And so when I go on social media, it's a pretty positive place. It's not a lot of politics. It's not a lot of woe is me type stuff. I went on
Right.
one of my friends' feeds once. I couldn't believe. I mean, it was negative,
And
really
it
dark
and
stuff.
you kind of feel like this
Right.
weird feeling in your body, right, Lee?
Yeah.
Like your
I mean,
body was like, okay, I'm not doing that.
yeah, well, I
Yeah,
mean, look, you can see how people are falling into these. There's no hope. There's no point, right? And it's not just social media that's causing that. I
it's
got
not.
to say
It's
that,
not.
all right. But your feed can set a tone, right? So
Yeah, we
so
teach our athletes how to set up,
what?
design their social media
That's
to
what I
make
was
money.
going to lead into right now. That's
Yeah,
my next
yeah,
question: is how can athletes? I think this applies to adults too, though. How
yeah.
can we create better feeds for ourselves? What is the audit process?
Mhm.
And I guess apply it to like what can parents do to encourage their kids? Like, let's just say they do have social media. How do we audit a news feed and create a better news feed for performance?
Okay, first of all, this comes down to tech and science too, algorithms. So if you're going to go on and look at like a lot of guys are and girls, it's different. So for boys, they go on and look at hockey equipment and CCM and Bauer and they look at videos and
Mhm.
that's great.
That's their
So those
thirst.
are great
Yeah.
things. I don't that's okay. But if you're going on to mindlessly TikTok watch, you're wasting your time and your brain. You're not going to feel good. So let's get rid of the things, A, that don't make us feel good. And here I'm going to give you a choice. So I ask our athletes over the weekend, just sort of like be aware of what you're doing for the whole weekend. What do you think on Monday that you can get rid of? Do you know that 90% delete TikTok? Because the
That's
same
crazy.
reels are on Instagram reels. So I'm like, okay, what do you need? Do you want us to keep Snapchat? Do you want to keep this? We have to keep WhatsApp to communicate with our coaches or our teams. I get them to operate it like a business. Wake up, check your email, check your business first.
Yeah.
That way we keep the dopamine hit low. Then go and like check out your friends' stuff. Well, block the people you don't want to see.
Right. That's
Block,
can we stop there for a
block,
second?
block.
That's a big tip. Like
Block.
you have the
Big
power
word
to
of
do that.
2024. Block.
Yeah, block. You can
Yeah.
even
Delete.
snooze on some of these apps. Like you don't even
Oh,
have to
yeah.
fully block them. Like it's, but
Yeah.
Larissa, I like that point because it's like you have a choice. If one of your friends
Yeah.
or a page is giving you really stuff that doesn't make you feel good, remove them. That's a
Yeah.
choice.
I love delete. Delete's a good thing, athletes, and make it if you find inspiring people. Like if you are a lot of our athletes don't know who they are, Lee, because they've been told who they are from social media, right?
Right. Right.
Like, right? And I have
Human
kids who
highlight reel. Yeah.
have no idea who they are. I even have professional athletes who don't even believe in themselves still, right? Because they've come up on a digital generation.
Right.
So we have to go and as soon as you find out who we are and we teach our athletes who they are, who they like, what they like about themselves, this is interesting. This is the coolest part. The brain goes, that doesn't align with my values.
Right.
Ah, now we have a
Yes.
value system, a
Right.
moral guidance compass, and they're like, I don't really want to see Botox. I really don't want to see this materialism. I want to see people who inspire me, like, okay, I'm a female hockey player. I want Sarah Nurse on my thing. You're darn right you do,
Right.
you know? Or I want to see Melte, or I want to see, right, Haley Schumacher. I want to see all these people. So follow them. They will inspire you,
Right.
but get rid of everyone else
Yeah.
who makes you feel like a night, like your spidey senses are going, or makes you feel like poop.
I went through an audit of my feed and I do it often. And
Yes, a
this is
month,
me.
once a month.
Yeah, this is me. I
Yeah,
am very keenly aware of if
yeah,
something does not make me feel good, right? And just to be fair, I do like review of, well, why doesn't this make me feel good? Is this me being insecure or is this just doesn't make me feel
yeah,
good?
yeah.
99% of the time, it's not making me feel good.
Right,
I remove it. I don't want to see it. I have a choice, right? And the other thing too, leaning on this too, while my news feed is very inspiring and positive, it's also still not reality. And I remind myself of that, like that this is ultra positive. This makes me feel good, but it's
right,
not real because there is struggle and strife in the real
right.
world. There are people
Yeah,
that are really having a hard time.
right.
And it just kind of reminds me of like this is not existence. This is not my identity, right? If anything,
The
it becomes
virtual world is not real,
it's not real.
right? At
And
all.
then we haven't even talked about escapism, right?
Oh
Which is,
gosh,
you have
well,
a
that
hard
I mean,
day.
maybe we have to
Yeah.
do a part two of this because we
Yeah.
haven't even touched on like extortion, safety, like
Right.
how to protect athletes. Like I got kids being scouted and they don't even know how to like we can go all into
Right.
how phones can actually help them with that. It's pretty interesting.
Right. Well, I do think that part two is going to be in order here. And look, I want to ask this question too, again, for
Yeah,
the
fire.
parents listening, because I think the tough part is like we are talking about taking something away that we know our kids love. I mean, there's no really other way of saying that. At least they think they love it. I think there's also another half to this, which is replacing it with family dinners and family time. Like in my house, And I
Yep.
I grew up with this too. Like so this was handed to me, I guess. Dinner is a very important time in my house. Now, I am still
Ours
lucky
too.
enough.
Yep.
Yeah, my kids are young enough that we can still do it, right? Like Mike's in a situation, kids might be going to practice. It gets harder as the kids get older. But that family time, there are no phones most of the time, I should say, right? And it's time to eat dinner. You're not leaving the table. We're going to
Yeah.
be
It's time
together.
to joke. It's time to fool
Right,
around. And then we even, so here's something interesting. I have an interesting program where we ask the parents to connect with their kids for an hour a night, put their phones down, and go back and watch documentaries or TV series with the kids all unplugged to
right.
help your child get unplugged. They need to see you unplugged. And you know what? Athletes, the number one determining factor in an athlete's life, first is a parent support, second is phone use. That's crazy.
That is crazy.
And parents aren't spending that time with their kids anymore. So here's something interesting. In 1 week, I've had parents say, I've learned a lot about my kid. He's really grown up because I get to connect with him again.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden, firing shots in the net. He's getting his Genos and his apples. So he's all right. So everything comes back to
Yeah.
connection
Well, and
and
I've seen this too,
confidence.
Larissa. Like, and Mike, I don't know if you've experienced this, but I've noticed that when we go on like a family trip or a family vacation, and we come
Yeah.
back, and some look, sometimes vacation's not stress free. Sometimes it could be like, oh man, that was a lot. But the
Well,
after effects are always generally positive. There's a closeness. You feel each other.
yes,
You, I'm equating this too.
yes.
You can equate this. You can, I'm sorry, you can put this on your teams too. You can do this with team building. We just
Oh
did a
gosh,
great
yeah,
episode on that not too long ago. But the togetherness creates more of a bond,
it
right?
does.
And I think that one of the things, again, tactic, my wife and I were talking because my kids are on multiple teams this year.
Yeah,
Sometimes we have to divide and conquer, sometimes we can go together. But we started looking at the weekends as like little vacation trips. So
yes.
yesterday, actually,
Make
believe
it
it or not,
exploratory. Yeah,
yeah, well,
yeah,
we had three different on ice events yesterday at three different rinks,
yeah,
starting at leaving kind of, 7:30 in the morning when we didn't get back till 8 at night. But we approached it as, hey, we're doing this as a family today. And we
yeah,
all went and we supported each other on the ice. And it was a good day. It was a lot, but it was a good
yeah.
day. But it was the mental approach, Larissa, that we
Right,
took of like, hey, look, this is a family day. We're doing this as
right,
a family. It's not here's your phone, we're
right.
going to drive an hour this way. Here's your
Yeah,
tablet.
yeah,
We made it that way.
yeah.
So again, I'm just trying to share tactics. I'm not saying
I
I'm
like, and
perfect
we
in any
make
way.
it games in the car. And
Right.
there's also things we've asked the parents to do, like, okay, if you're traveling, play the license game, talk in the car.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Don't
Yeah.
talk about hockey. Going back to some of
Definitely
the
don't talk
old
about
school
hockey. I
values,
tell people that one all the
right?
time.
And
Yeah.
and or watching a movie, like download stuff, right? But don't just sit there in silence because silence doesn't help anyone
No, no,
ever.
and again, you're not teaching them to communicate.
Yeah.
Last one from me, Mike. I'll throw it to
Yeah.
you if you've got
Yeah.
anything.
I got like
Yeah.
a minute. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll just say this, that it's hard. It's a hard conversation. You're going to get pushback. What's your advice to the parents that this is going to be hard, right? Like, what's your advice to them and why is this so worth it?
Did you address that to Mike or me? I
Oh,
thought it was
you.
me.
Sorry, my bad.
Oh, me.
That's you. Yeah.
I've
Um,
already I've
um,
already failed, so I can't help anybody.
no, 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 no. And you know what? We haven't failed. We just got a little caught up with
Right.
it's like buying new toys and everyone got this new toy and now we're like, wow, this does the most damage of any toy I've ever bought. So, what is the buy-in? Well, behavior should be a motivation, your value systems, and wanting to help your kids be productive adults. Phones will not, in any way, shape, or form, help your children become a really good, successful, productive adult,
Wow.
athlete or not. So, if you're looking at having, really close relationships with your kids, the parents who are off their phones the most will have those closer relationships. And those kids I see thriving, like killing their sports because they get to connect and talk with their parent because we need a dialogue. We don't want a monologue. And now kids today are just getting monologues from everybody,
Yep.
right? Yelling
Including
and
me.
directing. They don't get the dialogue.
Yeah.
So, and it's, I always ask my athletes when we have sessions with different teams, how is it at home? And they're like, my parents, they just hate me. I'm never good enough. And I have to talk them off that parent ledge and we give
Right.
them good parenting advice. You know, if a parent's really hard on you, then you can say, you know what? Every time you tell me I'm not good enough or I didn't get enough goals or I didn't do this, you put my brain in yellow. So do you know what that does, Mom? Dad? It puts me here. It puts me in a place of nervousness and I can't perform. So you're making it worse. And then say, Larissa said, I told you to tell you that.
Look, I think that's a great thing. It's also a good reminder. Not every kid feels safe at their home. We all take that for
Um,
granted.
it is shockingly higher than I've ever seen.
That's scary. And
Yeah.
that's a
Yeah.
terrific note to end this on and lead it to a part two. Larissa
Yeah, yeah,
Mills.
yeah.
Listen, I think we'd be remiss if we didn't ask you where can the audience find you? Where can they find
Oh,
your stuff?
oh, I'm in sweet old London, Ontario, but
Yeah,
we are global. We go everywhere. We're the mentalgameacademy.ca. We're on Instagram, the Mental Game Academy. I'm on LinkedIn. We also do corporate work. We do coaching work. We do help coaches, right? We do different partnerships. But I'm here to help the kids stay in sport, but stay equipped to do so,
I love it.
right? Like the number of kids quitting is now 33% a year less. So we have a problem in our sport ecosystem. That's a global number.
Yeah.
So in order to keep them in and keep them happy and motivated, I want them to be mentally tough and learn resilience. And the only way to do that is to teach them their mental skills again.
Absolutely. Well, listen, you're a resource for me, and I've learned so much from you. And I was really happy
Oh,
you came to this
thanks.
episode. We will do a part two of this. I
Thank
know you have to
you.
go, but I'll close it out there for all you listening. There's no way you didn't learn something on this episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Remember, you can text us a question, a comment, a thought. There's a link accompanying this episode wherever you're listening. Just tap that. It'll go right to one of our phones, which we're trying to stay off of. Or you can get on your desktop and you can email us, team@ourkidsplayhockey.com. But for Larissa Mills, Mike Benelli, Christy Cashin Burns, I'm Lee Elias. We'll see you on the next episode of Our Kids Play Hockey. Have a great day, everybody. We hope you enjoyed this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey. Make sure to like and subscribe right now if you found value wherever you're listening, whether it's a podcast network, a social media network, or our website, ourkidsplayhockey.com. Also, make sure to check out our children's book, When Hockey Stops, at whenhockeystops.com. It's a book that helps children deal with adversity in the game and in life. We're very proud of it. But thanks so much for listening to this edition of Our Kids Play Hockey, and we'll see you on the next episode.